All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to say call Haloyam Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai Bahashim Rakal Quitash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who have taught me this truth and who rule well in this truth. Shalom to the 144,000 and the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel that is scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. Peace and mercy unto you. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, you are the true Hebrew Israelites that the Bible speaks of. You are the true chosen people of the book of the Bible. All right. So I got a question. In this lesson, I have a question, okay, for you wacky tacky Christians. All right. And my question is, why was Moses and also Apostle Paul, why were they mistaken as Egyptians? Right? Because Egyptians are so-called black people. Right? Because most people, especially you wacky tacky Christians, right, don't know or understand or acknowledge who the true Israelites are. All right? You believe that the people in the Holy Land today are the true Jews, the Jews that the Bible speaks of, which that is false. All right? The true Israelites today are the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans here in North, Central, and South America, but also the Israelites that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth under the other nations, looking like the other nations, because that was one of the curses the Lord poured upon his chosen people, that they would be scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So throughout generations, the Israelites laid down with the other nations and then started looking like the other nations. All right? But my question is, why was Apostle Paul and Moses, who both were Jews, well, you had Apostle Paul from the tribe of Benjamin. Apostle Paul was a Benjamite. And Moses was a Levite from the tribe of Levi. But collectively, all right, the southern kingdom, all right, which was the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Levi, and the tribe of Benjamin, collectively, all right, at times, all right, the southern kingdom was known as Jews. All right, because the southern kingdom is also known as the kingdom of Judah. All right, that's where you get the word Jew from. All right, from the name Judah. Collectively, all right, at times the southern kingdom was known as Jews, the kingdom of Judah. All right, so why were the Jews, all right, Apostle Paul and Moses mistaken for Egyptians? Because are not so-called Egyptians, right, so-called black people? Because where is Egypt at? Egypt is in Africa. Right? Are not so-called Africans so-called black people? Right? And the Egyptians, all right, which their true name, their true nationality is Mizraim, all right? They descend from Mizraim, all right? They're Mizrahites, all right? Who do the Egyptians, the Mizrahites, descend from? They descend from Ham, which was one of Noah's three sons. All right? Did not Ham father the dark nations? So everyone that came out of Ham, all right, were all dark people. I'm talking about dark, so-called black as hell, like Wesley Snipes. Okay? All right? You have a map of Africa right here. This is the entire continent of Africa, right? Right here. And you have Egypt right here. All right? Egypt is in Africa, right? Why were the Jews, Apostle Paul and Moses, all right, why were they mistaken for Egyptians, all right, if the Israelites are so-called white people? All right? If the Jews are so-called white people. All right? I have a book here. All right? This book, All right, it's called, all right, Compact Bible Dictionary by Zondervan. All right, Zondervan, Compact Bible Dictionary. All right, so let's look up one of the definitions. All right, which we're going to get the definition of Ham, which was one of Noah's three sons. Okay, so let's get it. Let's zoom in real quick. So this is the definition of Ham. All right, it says the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of the 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor, right? He became the progenitor. The word progenitor means forefather, right? He became the progenitor or forefather of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. All right. So the forefather of the dark races, which is Ham, all right, which all the sons of Noah, all right, were dark men, very dark men. All right. But Ham, all right, he was the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes here in America that were brought to the here to the Americans on slave ships, showing you that not all black people, so-called black people, are the same, right? He was the progenitor of the dark races, but not the Negroes. You Negroes here in America. But who? But the Egyptians. So the Egyptians are a very dark people. A very dark people. All right? The people in Egypt today, they're not the real Egyptians. All right? Just like the people in the land of Israel today, they're not the true Israelites. Same thing with the Egyptians. The people in the land of Egypt today are Arabs. All right? Because they took over that land in 640 AD and pushed the true Egyptians out. All right? And we're going to get that in a second. All right? Ham, the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Yeah, all these nations, right? The Egyptians, the Ethiopians, all right, Libyans, and Canaanites, all right? All those nations came out of Ham. All right, the Egyptians, all right, the progenitor of the dark race. The Egyptians are a dark race. All right. So, you know, Apostle Paul, right, being an Israelite, and Moses being an Israelite, they were mistaken for Egyptians, right? So if the ancient Israelites were a so-called white people, how could they be mistaken for Egyptians, right? So I also got this other book here, right? You know, this is all true history, all right? I got this other book here. Let me grab it real quick. It's called From Babylon to Timbuktu by Rudolph R. Windsor. All right, and I haven't gone into this book in a minute. All right, this book is called From Babylon to Timbuktu. All right. So you got the cover page. I'm gonna show you the cover page real quick, if it will freaking load. All right. So it says From Babylon to Timbuktu, a history of the ancient black races, including the black Hebrews. All right, the so-called black, you know, because we're not really black. All right, what's known as black today is not really black. All right, so-called black people, their skin is brown, very, very dark brown. All right, and it ranges from very dark to light. All right, dark brown to light brown. All right, because you got light skin and you got dark skin. All right, a history of the ancient black races, including the black Hebrews, and that's why we say so-called black, because no one on earth is really black. All right, and the word black means dark, dirty, and evil. All right, the true so-called black man is the so-called white man. All right, but from Babylon to Timbuktu, a history of the ancient races, including the black Hebrews. So when you go to page, let Let's grab it real quick. I think it's page 30. Let's grab it real quick. All right, you zoom in. All right, this is chapter 4. All right, and it says the title, the original black Jews. All right, and again, so-called black. All right, because the ancient Israelites, the Jews, the Levites, the Benjamites, the Ephraimites, all the tribes were so-called black. Right, and even today, the Southern Kingdom, the Jews, are still so-called black. All right, you're going to have some Judites with white skin, right? Because that was part of the curse, right? To be scattered, all right, amongst the other nations throughout the four corners of the earth. So we ended up looking like the other nations, right? Becoming their skin tone and complexion, right? So you're going to have Jews. You are going to have Israelites, Jews, all right? Levites and Benjamites and with very light skin, man. Almost so-called white skin. Especially the southern the northern kingdom, all right. You Puerto Ricans, you Dominicans, all right. You Latinos, man, all right, because y'all Israelites too, all right. You Puerto Ricans, you Dominicans, all right. You Venezuelans, you Guatemalans, all right. Chileans, all right. You people from Nicaragua, all right. Y'all Israelites, man. All right, the original so-called black Jews, it says originally all Hamites and Shemites, all right, were black. Okay, do we just not read out of the Bible dictionary that Ham, all right, because Hamites, right, people who are Hamites are people that descend from Noah's son Ham. That's why they're called Hamites. Who are the Hamites? Right? Let's get it again. Who are the Hamites? The Egyptians, the Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Those are the Hamites. And it says that Ham, all right, he became the progenitor of the dark races. Not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. Okay, so he was the progenitor of the dark races. What dark races? The Egyptians, all right, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. But the whole point is the Egyptians, right? Because Apostle Paul and Moses, they were mistaken for Egyptians in the Bible, and we're going to get that. All right, the Egyptians are a dark. So how can someone, all right, like those people in the land of Israel today, being real light, pale skin, so-called white, being pale as hell over there in the land of Israel today, how would they be able to be mistaken as Egyptians, man? Being freaking pale as hell, man. You know? All right. So again, let's so it says originally all Hamites, which Egyptians are Hamites, right? Originally, all Hamites, which are Egyptians, and Shemites were black. All right, so the Egyptians were a so-called black people. So again, why was Moses and Apostle Paul mistaken as an Egyptian? Because the Israelites, all right, are the Jews are a so-called black people. The ancient Israelites were a so-called black people. All right, and the Jews today, mainly the Jews, all right, because most of Judah, all right, whether you're of the tribe of Judah, the tribe of Levi, or the tribe of Benjamin, most of them are still dark as hell today. Most so-called black as hell today. You Negroes that came over here on slave ships, okay, during the transatlantic slave trade. That prophecy is written in the Bible. You are the real Jews that the Bible speaks of. All right. Originally, all Hamites, which is everyone who descends from Ham, and Shemites, which is everyone who descends from Shem, which is another one of Noah's three sons, right? Originally, all Hamites and Shemites were black. All right. And that's why Israelites, all right, Jews, are known as Semites, because they descend from a man named Shem. It's not really Semite, like it says right here. It says Semites, right? That's what we call it today, Semites. But it's really Shemites, all right? Because they descend from Shem, which was one of Noah's 3 sons. The Israelites descend from a man named Shem. That's why they're known as Shemites / Semites, all right? Moabites, which are the Chinese people today, and Ammonites, which are the Japanese people today, they're also Semites. They're also Semitic. Arabs are Semitic because they descend from Shem. They descend from Ham. All right? A lot of people don't even know what the word Semitic means. Right? They don't even know why Jews are known as a Semitic people. They have no idea why Jews are known as a Semitic people, right? Because they descend from Shem, right? Even Esau, which that's who's in the land of Israel today. Esau, who birthed the Edomite race, which the Edomite race, that's who's in the land today, the Edomites, which is a race that the Lord hates with all his heart, right? They're in the land of Israel today. That's who's in the land of Israel today. All right. So it says originally, all right, even they are Shemites, all right, Semitic. All right. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're Semitic, but they're not the real Jews that the Bible speaks of. Right? Because Jews aren't the only ones that are Semitic. The Israelites are not the only ones that are Semitic. Arabs are Semitic. Chinese and Japanese people are Semitic, right? It says originally all Hamites and Shemites were black. Abraham was a black Shemite and a descendant of Shem. Yeah. All right. And the name of Abraham was Abram before he was referred to as Abraham. Yeah, Abraham means Abba, oh man, I forgot it. Abraham, all right, which means father of a multitude, and then Abram, which is Abaram, which means father exalted, all right. Ab, which comes from Abba, which means father, and Aram, all right, comes from Aram, which means exalted, or to raise up or to rise up. So father exalted, that was his name, all right. All right, the name of Abraham was Abram before he was referred to as Abraham. All right, the 3 Hebrew patriarchs were Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yeah, because the promise first went to Abraham, then it went to Isaac, and then went to Jacob. Then out of Jacob, whoever came out of Jacob, which is the nation of Israel, all right, is the one that received the promise of the kingdom of heaven, of a land flowing with milk and honey. All right, and the Israelites today are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. All right, it says this Jacob begat 12 sons. Yeah, the 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, this Jacob begat 12 sons who later fathered the 12 tribes of Israel. Yeah, you see. All right, Abraham was not the father of only the Hebrew nation, but also the Arab nation. Yeah, I told you the Arabs are also Semitic. All right, because Abraham comes from who? From Shem. All right, it says Abraham was a black Shemite and a black Shemite and a descendant from Shem. All right. Originally, all Hamites and Shemites were black, and we know this because of true history, man. Because of the scriptures. All right. Great study, wisdom, and knowledge of the Bible will allow you to know that who the true Israelites are. If you think that the people in the land of Israel today are the real Jews that the Bible speaks of, you lack very great understanding of the Bible. All right, very great understanding. All right, very great wisdom, knowledge, and understanding you do lack of the scriptures, of the holy scriptures we know as the Bible today. All right, which the word Bible, all right, comes from the Greek word biblios, which means collection of books, because that's what the Bible is. It's a collection of books. All right, a collection of scrolls, which became books. All right, but you know the whole point was matter of fact, because I said the people in the land of Egypt today, because you would like to think to yourself, oh, the people in the land of Egypt today, they're not really a dark people. Well, yeah, you're right, because the people in the land of Egypt today are not the real Egyptians. All right, So this, we're gonna prove that. All right, this is a book. All right, called The Negro Question, written by Lee Cummins. All right, all right. So when you go into this book, all right, you have one of these pages here. All right, which this is page 9. Right. As you see at the top right here, it says, notice that the ancient Egyptians and the modern Egyptians are still black, right? All right, you got the ancient Egyptians, you know, the statues of the ancient Egyptians, all right? You got boy King Tut, all right? King Nefertari, all right? Nefertari, all right? And you got modern day Egyptians, even the you know, when they first came into that land, because Arabs were very dark too. All the nations were very dark except for Esau, man. All right? Except for the Edomites. All right? But anyway, when you go at the top right here, it says, notice that the ancient Egyptians and the modern Egyptians are still black. If you said they don't look like the Arabs in Egypt today, you are correct. The so-called Arabs in Egypt invaded Egypt in 640 AD and have been there ever since. So the people in the land of Egypt today, they're Arabs. They're not the true Egyptians. It says, therefore, the Egyptian citizen in Egypt today is not the descendant of the ancient Egyptians. That's right, because like it says right here, when the Arabs invaded Egypt in 640 AD, they pushed the true Egyptians out. All right? And now the people that's in Egypt today are Arabs. All right? Matter of fact, let's look at a modern day Egyptian. Let's Google what a modern day Egyptian looks like. All right? Right? Let's look at them. Let's go to images, right? See? This is what a modern day Egyptian looks like. They're Arabs, man. It says Egyptian family life. That's why they got the I forgot what this is called. That the women wear, the Muslim women wear. All right, to cover their hair. All right, look at them. Look how light they are. They're Arabs, man. All right. This is what a modern Egyptian looks like. These are not the real Egyptians. These are Arabs. All right. Like we just read, it says the Arabs in Egypt invaded Egypt in 640 AD and have been there ever since. Therefore, the Egyptian citizen in Egypt today is not the descendant of the ancient Egyptians. They're not the true Egyptians, man. All right. The true Egyptians will be the Sudanese people. All right. Let's get that. All right. These are Arabs, bro. All right, let's look at the Sudanese people. All right, because the Sudan is south of Egypt, is it not? Right. So let's get that right. Yeah. So when the Arabs invaded Egypt, they pushed the Egyptians out, all right, and pushed them down south. All right. And let's prove that. So let's get Sudanese people, right? Let's Google Sudanese people, right? These are the true Egyptians. Right? These are the people that were on these are the people that you see on the pyramid walls, that are painted on the pyramid walls, right? Look at them. Dark as hell. These are Egyptians. The Sudanese people are the Egyptians, man. All right, look how dark they are. And Apostle Paul and Moses were mistaken for people that look this dark, for the Egyptians, man. All right? Come on, man. All right? Right? Because you even got them, because they usually have curly hair, right? Look. These are the people that are on the, look. These are the people that are on the these are the Egyptians, man. Matter of fact, let's Google that too. These are the people that are on the pyramid walls in Egypt, man. Egyptians on the pyramids. Let's do that. Right? right? Look, these are the ancient Egyptians. This is what they look like on the pyramid walls, right? Let's get a let's get a real photo. That might have been a real photo actually, but I'm not sure. Uh, all right. And you did have the so-called UFOs back there in ancient Egypt. All right. That's what gave the Israelites light by day. All right. When you read about the pillar of fire in the book of the book of Revelations, in the book of Exodus, all right, that helped that it said it was a pillar of fire. No, it was a light by day and a pillar of fire of night. It was talking about a so-called UFO. So yeah, the Egyptians saw the so-called UFOs, which they're known as chariots in the Bible, and this is what's going to save us from the nuclear destruction. When America's destroyed in this third world war, we're going to get beamed up into the chariots, man. But anyway, you see how the Egyptians look with their hair and all that, and that's how this man looks. Look, these are the true Egyptians. These are the men that are on the walls. Look at these dark men. All right, and Moses and Apostle Paul were mistaken for Egyptians, so we're gonna get that. All right, let's finally get it, man. All right, so where am I? All right, so you got the book of Acts, the 21st chapter. Apostle Paul, all right, was mistaken for an Egyptian. All right, so it says this is Acts 21 and 37. I'll start right here. I'll just get straight to the point. All right, Acts 21 and 37. It says, and as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto thee? All right, who said, canst thou speak Greek? Yeah, so the chief captain asked Paul, canst thou speak Greek? You can speak Greek? Because Paul was able to speak Greek, because you had Israelites back then that spoke Greek. The Israelites were known as Greeks. All right, that's why when the Messiah was hung up on that cross to be crucified, all right, what was that sign? What that sign that was over him? What did it read? King of the Jews. And what languages was it in? It was in Greek, Latin, and in Hebrew, because you had Israelites that spoke Greek, Latin, and in Hebrew. All right, it says, as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto thee? Who said, canst thou speak Greek? So the chief captain asked Paul if he could speak Greek. All right, because he was amazed that he spoke Greek. And that's why he continued to say this. Let's read it again from verse 37. Acts 21 and 37. As Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, may I speak unto thee? Who said, canst thou speak Greek? Are not thou that Egyptian? So Paul, all right, he was mistaken for the Egyptian. The chief captain said, aren't you that Egyptian? Which before these days made us an uproar and led us out into the wilderness, 4,000 men that were murderers, right? So that chief captain, all right, asked Apostle Paul, said, are not thou that Egyptian? Said, aren't you Egyptian? Why was Paul mistaken for an Egyptian, man? If the Israelites are so-called white people, if the ancient, especially because the people that were in the land of Egypt during this time was the southern kingdom, all right? The northern kingdom got taken away by the Assyrians, all right, led during the time of the Assyrian captivity, all right? And they fled the Assyrian captivity, all right, to come to the other side of the world, which were the Americas. The southern, excuse me, did I say southern kingdom? I meant to say northern kingdom. Let me say that again, all right? During this time, during the time of Apostle Paul, the people that were in the land of Israel was the southern kingdom, all right, which was the tribe of Levi, the tribe of Benjamin, and the tribe of Judah, which the southern kingdom, all right, collectively was known as the kingdom of Judah. So they were all known as Jews, all right? The northern kingdom was taken away by the Assyrian captivity way before that. And they fled the Syrian captivity, all right, to come to the other side of the world, which is the Americas, all right? The northern kingdom got taken away into the Assyrian captivity and fled the Assyrian captivity to come to the other side of the world, which is the Americas, which would be today you Latinos and you Native Americans, man. All right? So the Jews were mistaken as who? Egyptians, which are a dark people. We already established that through many, how many books do we had to get, man? How much knowledge do I gotta pull out of the books, man? Right? Hold on a sec. All right? This is Ham, all right? It says the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood, and one of 8 persons to live through the flood. He became the progenitor of the dark races, Ham, right? Ham was the forefather of the dark races, so everyone that comes out of Ham are known as Hamites. All right? He became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes, but the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. So the Egyptians are known as Hamites. All right? And then when you go back into this book, we call Babylon and Timbuktu. It says originally all Hamites and Shemites were black. All right? So the Jews are so how else would they be mistaken as Egyptians, man? Come on, man. Egypt is in Africa. All right? All right? Egypt is in Africa. Are not so-called Africans, so-called black people? Come on, dog. All right? Now let's get Moses being mistaken as an Egyptian. All right? So it says Moses escapes to Midian. Yeah, he had to run to Midian and escape Egypt. Or he had to go to Midian, right? Because he killed an Egyptian. Because an Egyptian smote one of his fellow brethren, a fellow Hebrew, man. And it vexed his spirit. It got him heated, man. Because those are his people. He seen his people being treated badly. Because the Israelites were slaves and captives in ancient Egypt. And then the Lord Yahweh had to split the Red Sea to get him out of there, man. All right? So it says Moses escapes to Midian, all right? I'll start at verse 15, but the point is in 19, all right? It says, now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. Yeah, because Moses ran, and he ran because he killed an Egyptian, all right? But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs, all right, to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Ruel their father, he said, how is it that ye are come so soon today? And they said, an Egyptian delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water for us and watered the flock. So they mistaken Moses as for an Egyptian, right? So how can one race be mistaken as another race that is dark as hell? A pale-skinned white man can't be mistaken as an ancient Egyptian, man. All right? The ancient Israelites were a so-called black people, and they're still so-called black today. Mainly the southern kingdom. The northern kingdom are all over the place when it comes to their skin color. Dark as hell to pale as hell, man. Today. But during this time, the northern and the southern kingdom were all so-called black as hell, dark as hell, man. During the time of Moses. All right? So, I'll leave it at that. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying. Lord willing, it was edifying. Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai Ratazah. This lesson is edifying and was edifying. Call Haloyam Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai Bahashim Rakar Kwitash. All right, so on to the next one. Shalom, shalom.